Bretonnia are of course best known for their peasants, which provide the backbone for their economy. Of course, these peasants only work as long as they aren't being drafted into the military, making the early game a delicate balancing act between getting a decent sized army without crippling your economy. Even later in the game, this can become a problem, as the Lord without any vows completed will be forced to use these lower tier peasant units to avoid massive upkeep penalties until they complete some side quests. Thankfully, the central location of the Bretonnian homelands allows them to make friends with most other factions, especially as a member of the Ordertide, allowing them to keep themselves a little bit safer, as well as boost their cash even more. Sadly, this central location also means they're an easy target for enemies who can come from any direction to attempt to use your coastline as a gateway to the old world. Let's now go over the different Bretonnian factions. First up, we have Corone, who are led by Lord Luen Leoncoeur. For his faction effects, he gains 10% campaign movement range for all armies, and plus 50% to the leadership aura size for all lords when attacking. For Luen's army, he starts with all knightly vows unlocked, and gains plus 12 leadership and plus 8 attack for his army when fighting versus Warriors of Chaos, Demons of Chaos, Undead, and Greenskins. His faction starts in Corone, and his starting army has 2 Spearmen at Arms, 1 unit of Peasant Bowmen, 2 Knights of the Realm, 2 Knights Errant, and a unit of Pegasus Knights, as well as a Damsel of Heaven's Hero. For the climate preferences, temperate, savanna, and desert are suitable, magical forest, mountains, temperate island, and jungle are unpleasant, and frozen, wasteland, ocean, and chaotic wasteland are uninhabitable. Their victory conditions, they must destroy Mouzlon and occupy, loot, raise or sack 30 different settlements. You start in a war against Mouzlon and can take them out in a few turns once you get a full army on the go, so that's one condition checked off pretty easily. After this, you can do whatever you want while you farm chivalry and unite the Bretonnian lands, under your rules, to get up to those 30 settlements. You can also clear out the nearby greenskins and vampire counts to keep those lands safe from invaders. Norsca and Chaos will also come from the north, so travelling to take them out as soon as possible should be on your to-do list to make your empire a little easier to manage. Next up, we have the Bordelot Errant, led by Alberic de Bordelot. For his faction effects, he gains plus 2 recruit rank and minus 1 recruitment duration for Bretonnian knight units, plus 50% income from ports, and all armies in his faction are immune to high seas, reef, and storm attrition. For his army, he gains plus 5 melee defense for peasant mob, men at arms, and spearmen at arms units, and plus 10 melee defense for knights of the realm units. His faction starts in Burgonne, and his starting army has 2 foot squires, 3 men at arms, 2 pox arrow peasant bowmen, and 2 knights of the realms, as well as a paladin hero. For his climate preferences, jungle moves into suitable, but apart from that, it's pretty much the same. For the victory conditions, you must complete the Grail Vow with Alberic de Bordelot, as well as the 30 settlements. Since you have no specific factions to take out, you can go and do whatever you want, as long as you work on those vows and settlements. The starting wall will take you to the west, where you can take on more lizards, or instead move on to the nearby Chaos, Dark Elves, and more. Honestly, just follow your heart here, since you need to keep playing to win. The place with the most habitable land will be to the south, since most of Lustria is suitable to you thanks to that jungle preference. So take out the lizards, and then move south for more of them, among many other factions in the area. Next up, we have Carcassonne, and they are led by the Fate Enchantress. For their faction effects, they gain plus 5 to the peasant economy available to the faction, and plus 15% casualty replenishment. For Lord Effects, she doesn't really have anything aside from some abilities. The faction starts in Castle Carcassonne, and her starting army has a unit of battle pilgrims, a unit of men at arms, 2 spearmen at arms, some peasant mob, 3 peasant bowmen, some Grail Guardians, and a blessed field trebuchet. She also starts with a paladin hero. For her climate preferences, they are the exact same as Luen. For her victory conditions, she must complete the Trough of Virtue vow, as well as the 30 settlements. Another one here where you just need to get the vows done and take some settlements. The starting war with the Greenskins will take you north to complete your starting province. You can then take the fight to Grom to eliminate any immediate Greenskin risk, and head further north to take out the ones in the very, very north. And you're honestly pretty safe aside from Ikit to the south, but he'll take quite a while to go up to you. Work on farming chivalry when you can by sending out armies to battle any potential threats like Moodlands in the north, Norsca and Chaos, or the Beastmen. Just keep progressing the vows and using your chivalry to confederate all of Bretonnia for the settlements that you need. Next up, we have Chevaliers de Lyonesse, and they are led by Réponse de Lyonesse. For the faction effects, she gains plus 3 control for all provinces, minus 50% upkeep for embedded heroes, plus 8 melee defense for questing knights, and minus 80 relations with vampire counts, coast, and tomb kings. For her army, she gains plus 5 physical resistance and plus 5 leadership for all peasant units. Her faction starts in Kofa, and her starting army has a unit of foot squires, some pole men at arms, 2 spearmen at arms, 2 peasant bowmen, some questing knights, some knights of the realm, and a field trebuchet, as well as a paladin hero. Her climate preferences are the same as Luen and Faye, and for her victory conditions, she must destroy the Dragonhof Conclave and the followers of Nagash, as well as the 30 settlements. Réponse has the hardest start, mainly because she's so deep in hostile territory and has a lot of potential enemies. Since you need to take 2 of these out, I'd follow the same starting war to build up some momentum and a big army before moving on to the Rakaf dynasty. It will give you an easy window into the rest of the desert. Head through Arabid to take on Arkan and take him out nice and early before he gets too strong. After this, head back to the central desert and move south towards Manfred to take him out as soon as you can, again before he gets too strong. After this, you have the rest of the desert to take out with more Tomb Kings, Chaos, and more nearby, as well as reconnecting with the rest of Bretonnia. Moving on now to the faction mechanics, first up we have Chivalry. Chivalry is a currency all Bretonnian factions gain over the course of their campaigns by winning battles, and is lost by performing unchivalrous actions such as sacking settlements or raiding. Depending on the level of chivalry in stock, factions will gain bonuses to unit stats, XP, and much more, so gaining as much as possible as fast as you can should be a priority. Upon reaching at least 2,000 chivalry, the faction will gain the ability to summon the Green Knight. This is a legendary hero that you want to embed in an army to give some added power on the battlefield with his top tier stats. He only sticks around until he dies or 25 turns pass, so make use of him when you actually need him. Next up we have the peasant economy. Each settlement you have in your control increases your peasant capacity by 2 and your capital contributes 8. This capacity is then consumed when you recruit peasant units, which are indicated by this icon. Recruiting more peasants than you have capacity will reduce the income of your farms significantly. Staying within your capacity will instead increase farm income and offer massive upgrade reductions for certain units. And finally we have the knightly vows. All lords and paladin heroes in your faction have access to 3 vows that must be completed to use the roster to its full capacity. Each vow requires you to choose a quest such as leveling up, battling at sea, and more. Completing these quests completes the vow, and they can then move on to the next one until all are completed. For the lords, completing these vows greatly reduces upkeep for the more elite cav units, making it almost impossible to use them without being completed. They also gain other campaign and battle bonuses, so these are very worth getting as soon as possible. The heroes, they have some minor battle buffs, so you don't really need to focus on them quite as hard, but if you can complete them just by playing the game, you might as well for the added buffs. Of course, since Bretonnia can take factions, they have commandments available to them. First up, Venerate the Lady. This increases control and reduces corruption, which is of course great when you've just taken over a province and want to clear out any corruption and keep it under control without any rebellions. The Realm of Chivalry increases research rates and decreases building cost, of course great for saving any cash when you need some expensive building, or if you just want to turn it on passively in the late game to finish all that research. Levy Tithes increases income from all buildings, obviously use this when you need some cash. Extensive Patrols reduces recruitment cost and increases recruitment capacity, obviously great for when you're doing any recruitment. And the Peasant's Duty increases growth, which is of course great for speed grown provinces. And finally we come to the research tree. This tree is separated into 3 areas. The Chivalric Code focuses on relations with other factions and confederating other Bretonnian factions by spending large amounts of chivalry. This changes for Opponents, where it instead contains many Lord and Hero buffs rather than the confederations. The Decrees tree focuses on earning chivalry through fighting with non-human factions, as well as buffing your armies against these factions. And finally, Economic Investment covers pretty much everything else, including infrastructure and unit buffs. I'd first go into the Decrees to buff yourself versus whatever faction you're up against to start off with. I'd then go into Economic Investment for some early help with income and growth. And once you get a bunch of chivalry, feel free to explore the Chivalric Code to get more land under control, as well as improve relations with other factions. And that's everything you need to know to play Bretonnia in the campaign, but if you want to check out guides for the rest of the factions in Immortal Empires, then click on this playlist here to see them all.